Few people realize it, but some of life's greatest lessons are hidden in the pages of the Bible, in stories that at first may seem distant from us. Nehemiah, for example, was not a king nor a famous prophet. He was just a cupbearer, an apparently ordinary man. Yet his decision to act changed the destiny of an entire city. Have you ever thought about what this biblical story could reveal about your own life today? Throughout this journey, you will discover the secrets Nehemiah applied when facing the ruins of Jerusalem, secrets that still have the power to transform your reality. Get ready to uncover profound, non-obvious principles that can bring clarity and direction to your challenges. And before diving into this content, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay tuned for every new teaching that can impact your walk. The first secret to starting a process of rebuilding is to recognize reality with sincerity. Nehemiah wept before the ruins of Jerusalem, without trying to disguise or minimize the situation. Many people hide the destroyed areas of their lives, but that only delays the restoration process. The biblical story shows that admitting fragility opens space for true transformation. Without acknowledgement, there is no starting point. Instead of running from the pain, Nehemiah stood before it. Recognizing the broken points of life is like naming the wounds. Weakened faith, a family in crisis, a wounded heart. This act does not diminish anyone. On the contrary, it demonstrates courage. The Bible records that the biblical characters who faced their condition were given the opportunity to start again. Nehemiah followed this same path of humility and truth. Trying to cover up ruins does not rebuild them. It is like applying fresh paint over a wall full of cracks. The structure remains compromised. Nehemiah, however, chose to look at Jerusalem without disguises. This disposition is fundamental because only what is recognized as broken can truly be restored. In the biblical story, there are countless examples of this principle. David acknowledged his sins, Elijah admitted his exhaustion, Peter wept over his failure. Each of them experienced restoration precisely because they faced reality. Nehemiah followed the same path, making it clear that there is no transformation without this first attitude of sincerity. This process requires time and depth. Nehemiah did not weep for just a moment, but remained sensitive to the situation for days. Acknowledgement is not a superficial act, but a conscious surrender to the weight of truth. Often the rush to hide problems prevents them from being treated at their root. Sincerity before ruins does not represent weakness, but strength. Saying, "I need help," or "I can't do it alone," creates space for rebuilding. Just as Nehemiah faced the rubble of Jerusalem, it is necessary to face one's own inner ruins. Faltering faith, broken relationships, extinguished hopes. Tears, in this context, also carry value. In the Bible, sincere weeping is not a waste of time, but a seed of change. Nehemiah wept because he was aware of the seriousness of the destruction, not out of despair. Recognizing reality is what allows God to turn tears into renewed strength. Nehemiah showed that facing the truth does not mean stopping at lament, but preparing the ground for the next step. Acknowledgement is not an end, but a beginning. After weeping over what he saw, he did not rush to act in any way. Instead, he positioned himself to place what was heavy into the right hands. The second secret to rebuilding what has been destroyed is to place everything in God's hands. Nehemiah did not rush anxiously to solve Jerusalem's problems. He first prayed and fasted. This choice shows that haste in acting by one's own strength usually leads to wrong decisions. The biblical story reveals that true restoration begins in the secret place before the Lord. Instead of relying only on human strategies, Nehemiah sought God's direction. The afflicted heart found comfort, and the weary mind found clarity. The Bible shows that the biblical characters who turned to the Lord received instructions they could never have found on their own. It was not anxiety that guided them, but the divine voice. The work of rebuilding began long before the first stone was moved. It started the moment Nehemiah handed the entire situation over to the Lord. This attitude teaches that no practical action can replace spiritual dependence. Prayer is not wasted time. It's the foundation that sustains any true change. This same pattern appears throughout the biblical story. Moses faced Pharaoh only after hearing the voice of God. Joshua crossed the Jordan because he received the command at the right time. Nehemiah waited in fasting and prayer before taking the first step. Surrender precedes victory. Trusting God's hands also means waiting for his timing. Nehemiah waited for the right moment to speak to the king and request the necessary resources. His attitude shows that faith is not passivity, but active trust. He did not move out of anxiety, but out of certainty that the Lord was guiding every detail. In practice, placing everything in God's hands means creating consistent spiritual habits. Just as Nehemiah fasted, today one can set aside time for prayer, silence, and reading the Bible to hear God's direction more clearly. This kind of discipline strengthens the heart and prepares the ground for firm decisions. Nehemiah's strength was not in human strategies, but in intimacy with God. He strengthened his spirit before facing external challenges, showing that spiritual battles require spiritual weapons. More important than what to do is who is guiding each step along the way. When Nehemiah prayed, he did not only ask for help, but fully surrendered the situation. He acknowledged his limitation and trusted in God's power to guide the restoration. This posture opens the way for the next steps, because only those who place everything before the Lord receive strategies that surpass human logic. The third secret to rebuilding is to plan with wisdom and turn prayer into action. Nehemiah asked the king for resources, set deadlines, and organized the work. He did not just wait for something to happen out of nowhere. The biblical story shows that faith and planning are not opposites, but walk hand in hand. Prayer is essential, but acting with wisdom is equally indispensable. Nehemiah teaches that trusting God does not mean neglecting responsibility. He presented a clear request to the king and knew exactly what he needed. This posture shows us that faith must be accompanied by practical actions. The Bible is full of biblical characters who combine spirituality and strategy to see concrete results. When someone desires to restore their spiritual life, it is not enough to simply recognize the need. Consistent habits must be adopted, setting aside daily time to read the Bible, establishing moments of prayer and meditation. These are simple but fundamental steps, just as Nehemiah organized each part of the work in Jerusalem. In the same way, if the goal is to restore relationships, the path also requires action. Nehemiah did not rebuild alone. He sought help, formed alliances, and placed each person in their position. Restoring bonds can begin with small gestures, asking for forgiveness, starting a dialogue, choosing reconciliation instead of silence. This balance between prayer and action is evident in the biblical story. Joseph interpreted dreams, but also managed Egypt with skill. David trusted God, but also trained his abilities as a warrior. Nehemiah prayed, but he also planned. The pattern is clear. Spirituality does not exclude practical responsibility. Planning with wisdom also means anticipating obstacles. Nehemiah knew he would face opposition, so he organized himself with vigilance and strategies. In the same way, any rebuilding process requires preparation, anticipating financial difficulties, emotional resistance, or personal limitations. This realistic outlook strengthens the journey. Another point is that Nehemiah was not content with vague ideas. He set deadlines, distributed roles, and tracked the progress of the work. Such clarity prevents stagnation. The Bible shows that discipline is a mark of those who desire true change. Without defined goals, rebuilding becomes only a distant wish. Nehemiah shows us that planning is not a detail, but part of the restoration process. The secret is to align the direction received in prayer with practical daily actions. With each step taken, the vision becomes more concrete. And at this point, another fundamental aspect emerges: no one builds great things completely alone. The fourth secret to rebuilding is to walk with people who share the same purpose. Nehemiah did not raise the walls of Jerusalem alone. He brought together families, neighbors, and leaders, each taking responsibility for a part of the work. The biblical story shows that when there is unity, even the most difficult challenges can be overcome. Rebuilding becomes lighter when there is cooperation. Nehemiah teaches us that no one achieves great results in isolation. He organized teams, distributed tasks, and awakened a sense of belonging in the people. This reveals that true strength lies in collectivity. The Bible presents various biblical characters who understood this principle, such as Moses, who relied on Aaron and Hur to win battles. Working together also means learning to trust and share responsibilities. Nehemiah did not try to carry everything on his own, but gave space for others to participate. This detail shows that humility and trust walk hand in hand. Rebuilding requires many hands, each contributing within its own capacity. The biblical story makes it clear that unity multiplies results. Gideon, with only a few men, defeated much larger armies because there was unity in the group. Nehemiah witnessed the same strength when each family took responsibility for a section of the wall. The sum of individual efforts produced a great collective work. Walking with people who help also means being surrounded by encouragement. Nehemiah knew that weariness would come, and that is why he kept the people motivated. Mutual support is powerful fuel that sustains perseverance, even in the face of the greatest pressures. A single word of encouragement can uphold someone among the ruins. The Bible shows us that true friendship is a tool of God to strengthen the journey. David had Jonathan as a faithful companion. Paul relied on Silas in his missions. Nehemiah had entire families by his side. Rebuilding becomes possible when there is this network of spiritual and emotional support. Another important point is that Nehemiah turned the work into a collective project, awakening a sense of responsibility in everyone. Each piece of the wall represented someone's dedication. This shows that when each person does their part, the final result is solid and lasting. Rebuilding is not the work of a lone hero, but of a united community. Nehemiah makes it clear that walking together is not just strategy, but necessity. He knew that alone he would not have come so far, and this awareness was decisive. This principle opens the way to the next secret. Even with support, one must be prepared to withstand the struggles that inevitably arise during the rebuilding journey. The fifth secret to rebuilding is to persevere even when struggles arise. Nehemiah faced mockery, threats, and pressure from all sides, but he did not abandon the work. He knew that giving up would mean leaving Jerusalem in ruins forever. The biblical story shows that every process of restoration encounters resistance, but victory belongs to those who remain steadfast. The criticisms against Nehemiah were not few. There were mockers who tried to discourage the people, saying the walls would easily fall. Still, the response was to keep building. The Bible presents other biblical characters who also faced opposition. Noah was ridiculed for building the ark. Daniel was persecuted for keeping his faith. All persevered and reaped eternal results. Nehemiah's perseverance also manifested in the face of threats. When enemies tried to intimidate, he organized armed guards and did not let the work stop. This teaches that perseverance is not only about resisting, but about acting with wisdom to keep going. Courage is not enough. Strategies are needed to remain firm on the path. In the biblical story, perseverance was always the key to victory. Joseph remained faithful even when betrayed, sold, and imprisoned until he saw the fulfillment of God's purpose. Nehemiah followed this same path, enduring external pressures without losing focus. Constancy is the mark of those who see promises fulfilled. It is natural that in the midst of rebuilding, temptations to give up appear. Nehemiah could have abandoned everything in the face of exhaustion and criticism, but he chose to remain. This principle shows that true progress is not about speed, but about the ability to continue even when everything seems against you. Perseverance is walking even when tired. The Bible shows that perseverance also means trusting that God is in control, even when the scenario looks unfavorable. Nehemiah kept his trust in the Lord, remembering that the work was not his, but divine. This conviction sustained him in the midst of threats. Perseverance, therefore, is more than human effort. It is an alliance with God. Another important aspect is that Nehemiah did not persevere alone. He motivated the people to resist with him. His words of encouragement rekindled hope in weary hearts. This demonstrates that perseverance is contagious. A firm leader inspires others to remain firm as well. Unity strengthens resistance against struggles. Nehemiah shows us that perseverance does not eliminate battles, but ensures that the work is completed. The secret is not to stop, not to retreat, not to surrender to the voices that try to discourage. This posture paves the way for the next essential step. After resisting the struggles, it is necessary to recognize where the true victory comes from and to whom the credit should be given. Have you noticed that no matter how many steps we take, there is always something only God can complete? Recognizing reality, praying, planning, walking with the right people, and persevering in struggles are all essential foundations. But in the end, what truly sustains everything is turning your heart back to the Lord. The biblical story makes it clear there is no true restoration without this surrender. Look at Nehemiah. He wept, sought God in prayer, planned with wisdom, united people, and did not give up in the face of opposition. But he knew the power to rebuild did not come from himself, but from the Lord. The Bible shows that the biblical characters who left their mark on history always made this move of surrender. That is what gives meaning to the entire process. It's no use rebuilding walls if the heart remains in ruins. It's no use fixing routines, strengthening relationships, and resisting pressure if deep down the soul stays distant from God. Turning to the Lord is what transforms effort into victory, plans into purpose, struggles into testimonies. Without Him, everything becomes empty. When you hand over the rubble of your heart to God, He transforms what seemed lost into something new. That's what happened in Jerusalem. It wasn't just about rebuilding walls, but restoring the people's faith. That same promise applies to your life. What seems irreparable today can become the starting point for a new story. The Bible shows that true tears are never wasted. Nehemiah wept over destruction, and God turned his tears into strength. The same can happen with you. What hurts today can become tomorrow's testimony. You just need to open space for God to enter the places you may have hidden, even from yourself. Turning your heart back to the Lord is an act of courage. It is admitting, I can't do this on my own, but with you, I can begin again. This decision changes destinies, heals wounds, and rekindles hope. It is in this place of surrender that you will find peace in the chaos, direction in the doubts, and strength in the weariness. It's not about religion, it's about relationship. Nehemiah wasn't only concerned with rebuilding walls, but with restoring the people's connection with God. You can take that same step today. Let go of control, trust Him, and allow His mighty hand to write a new chapter in your life. And here's the deepest point. All the previous steps lead to this. Recognizing, praying, planning, walking with people, and persevering are paths that prepare the heart to fully surrender to the Lord. It is in this surrender that true rebuilding happens, and it is here that you will find the new beginning you've been searching for. Now that you've learned the secrets from Nehemiah's biblical story, the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you just listen and move on? Or will you take the step of turning your heart back to God and beginning your own rebuilding? Remember, the Bible shows that even the strongest biblical characters only overcame because they chose to surrender their ruins to the Lord. And I want to hear from you. Which city are you watching this video from? Share it in the comments. It will be amazing to see where so many people ready to start again are coming from. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel turn on notifications, and stay with us, because the next video is already on the screen, and it may be exactly the continuation you need for your journey of faith and transformation.